At the White House Correspondents' Dinner, everything was moving like a normal high-profile night until it wasn't. A man armed with a shotgun rushed a security checkpoint, and within seconds, the room went into panic. People ducked, some hid, and agents from the United States Secret Service stormed in. Donald Trump and Melania Trump were immediately rushed out to safety during the response. One officer was shot at very close range with a powerful weapon, but survived because his bulletproof vest held up. Trump later said he spoke to the officer and he was doing well, charged a security checkpoint armed with multiple weapons, and he was taken down by some very brave members of Secret Service, and they acted very quickly and have just released for purposes of transparency, clarity. I've ordered it to be put out, you probably have it by now, put out on Truth, and put out on many other platforms. A tape showing the violence of this thug that attacked our Constitution, and also showing how quickly Secret Service and law enforcement acted on our country's behalf. Really did a great job. One officer was shot, but saved by the fact that he was wearing obviously a very good bulletproof vest. He was shot from very close distance with a very powerful gun, and the vest did the job. About an hour later, Trump posted online confirming the suspect had been caught. He even shared a video showing the man trying to rush security, along with a photo of him pinned face down on the floor. The suspect was identified as Cole Thomas Allen, a 31-year-old from California. Trump described him as a very sick person and said federal agents were already moving to search his apartment, has been captured. They're going to his apartment. I guess he lives in California and he's a sick person, a very sick person, and we don't want things like this to happen. And I think it's very important that I say, though, and I told the representatives of the evening, they did such a beautiful job. It was such a beautiful evening. And again, they're talking about free speech in our Constitution. That's what it's all about. Not just White House correspondence. It was really based on free speech in our Constitution. But I said very importantly that we'll do it again within the next 30 days, and we'll make it bigger and better and even nicer. So I just want to thank everybody that was involved. I also want to thank the press, the media. You've been very responsible in your coverage. I will say the FBI soon put out a statement that he acted alone and that there was no further danger. However, as details about this investigation have been coming out, it is being reported that a voicemail from the alleged shooter is doing rounds on the internet, suggesting that it may not have been the president that was the target, but rather the First Lady. But why? You see, Melania Trump recently held a press conference to clear her name against her alleged involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. What made it stand out was that there wasn't any major new report about her at that exact moment. That raised a simple question. What was she trying to get ahead of? And why was Melania being targeted? That's where her former best friend, Amanda Unaro, enters the picture. Amanda had been close to Melania for years. She was also in a long-term relationship with Paolo Zampoli, the man known for bringing Melania to New York in the 1990s, and someone who stayed close to Trump over the years. Amanda made it clear she had a lot to say. She claimed she lived with Zoli for around 20 years, and said straight up that Melania does not know the full extent of what she knows. When asked if she would testify before officials, she said yes, without hesitation. She also suggested that Melania's sudden press conference wasn't random. According to sources, it may have been triggered by the possibility that receipts were about to come out, actual documents, possibly even purchase agreements. In doing so, whoever was trying to take her out could also have been trying to silence her before she spoke out against a powerful network, one that allegedly does seem to include her own husband, Donald Trump. Amanda's story is absolutely heartbreaking. She said she met Zampoli when she was just 15 years old, and claimed he started pursuing her at that age. She described their relationship abusive, saying she went through years of control, harassment, and violence. She said her passports were taken, she was followed, and her phone was monitored. There is something seriously wrong here that needs to be looked at. It is being completely overlooked that there is a man who is a part of our current administration, who is in a long-term relationship and has a child with a model who he has been representing since she was a teenager, and also appeared on Jeffrey's flight logs when she was just 17 years old. I've already done an in-depth video, but I'm going to give you the cliff notes so that you can understand why I believe that this is very alarming. So Paolo Zimpoli, we've talked about him many times. He works in our current administration. He is on the board of the Kennedy Center. He has been a close friend and advisor and business partner to our sitting president since the 90s. He was the modeling agent who brought Melania to the United States to meet Donald Trump originally, and they would go on to be married. Right around the same time in the mid to late 90s, both Paolo and Donald Trump would open their own modeling agencies. Both of their modeling agencies would go on to face claims and accusations of word SA, theft of wages, overcrowded apartments where the models would be housed, exploitation, and visa fraud. Paolo is a United Nations diplomat. From 2013 to 2014, he collaborated with Galan and Jeffy's fake oceanic nonprofit environmental organization, Tiramar, which allowed Jeffrey and Galan to make further connections and gain credibility through working with the United Nations. Through his modeling agency, ID Models, he would go on to represent a Brazilian teenager named Amanda Angaro. And that is the teenager who would appear on Jeffrey's flight logs back in 2002, when she was just 17 years old. Just a few years after Amanda appeared on Jeffrey's flight logs, Paolo would go on to date her, and they would have a child together, and she would go on to also become a United Nations ambassador. And they have been together romantically for nearly 20 years, minus a brief moment in 2018 when they did break up. Most recently in June of 2025, just a couple months back, right around the time when the files became a topic of conversation again, Amanda was arrested in Miami alongside a Brazilian doctor. And they were arrested for illegally operating a medical facility, grand theft, organized scheme to defraud, and illegally acquiring prescription medications to give their patients as they were allegedly offering invasive cosmetic procedures without any kind of licensing. When she was arrested, Amanda was placed on an immigration hold and set to be deported. And that is the last thing that we have heard about Amanda Angaro. She went further, saying Zoli had connections with Jeffrey Epstein and even described him as someone who recruited girls for Epstein. She suggested that some relationships, including Melania's, felt planned, like part of a larger setup. She posted direct warnings, saying she would take legal action and that she had nothing left to lose. She said she was ready to expose everything she knew, even if it meant going after powerful people. She also made it clear she believed Melania and Trump should be worried about what she knows. On top of that, she claims she's now being treated as a fugitive. According to her, a prosecutor named Stacey Cleveland labeled her that way. And there's an active arrest warrant out of Florida. Pam Bondi actually awarded the lead detective who led Amanda's arrest raid of her home and her workplace in transfer to ICE custody, Detective Kenneth Seeley, with an Attorney General Award for his work as a detective back in 2019. Stacey Cleveland often gives teaching seminars to Florida police officers, specifically in the Miami-Dade County, which is where the Aventura Police Department is located, and the Aventura Police Department is the police department who handled the arrest of Amanda. Just as a side note, Pam Bondi has also been featured in the Aventura Police Department's newsletters. And just to understand the weakness of the case that Stacey Cleveland's office has against Amanda Angaro, the only piece of evidence of Amanda's crimes that they have shared with Amanda's legal team is a singular photograph of Amanda touching an FDA-approved laser machine. Not using the laser on a patient, her hand was placed on the machine. Amanda did nothing illegal whatsoever, which is probably why she was deported instead of given due process and a trial. Can only speak for myself when I say I most certainly would not want to be on the prosecuting end of this case when I know what kind of evidence that the defense is holding. The next figure who Amanda named, who we just talked about briefly, is Detective Kenneth Seeley of the City of Aventura Police Department, badge number 289. Like I just said before, Ken Selly is the lead detective who handled the arrest and the raiding of Amanda and her partner's home and workplace. Amanda believes this prosecutor is compromised because of alleged communication with Zampoli. She also claims that at one point, there was an attempt to have her sentenced to 6 years in prison without any evidence being presented. The key issue being raised here is that according to her, even the basic justification for her deportation hasn't been clearly shown. And while that would normally be something to investigate, she says no solid evidence has been presented publicly so far. It doesn't make any sense how the United States is actively deporting a United Nations diplomat, and it's not being talked about at all in mainstream media, regardless of the fact that she was on Jeffrey's plane at 17 years old, went on to have a child with the agent, who is supposed to be representing her, who's 15 years her senior. Like, putting that aside, because that's extremely relevant. But the fact that they're trying to deport a United Nations diplomat makes no sense at all. It doesn't make even a little bit of sense. I really hope that everyone is beginning to see the correlation between Donald Trump's modeling agency, Hosley's modeling agency, John Casablanca's modeling agency, Jean-Luc Brunel's modeling agency, and how all of those men were friends of Jeffrey, and they all happily gave Jeffrey access to the droves of young girls and women that they had virtual ownership of. And we know for a fact that all of these men had very similar business models when it came to running modeling agencies. We know for a fact that one of the main ways that these men stacked their modeling agencies was via selling dreams to vulnerable young girls and young women, then illegally bringing them from overseas to the United States, where these young girls and young women would work for them. They would live in housing that they provided for them, which was typically overcrowded and run down. And these men would take up to 80% of these girls' wages, and these girls would be left at the mercy of them. Not by their own choice, because they were guaranteed that their immigration would be all sorted out, but it never was. And before they knew it, they have nowhere to go. Obviously, this wasn't just happening internationally. This was happening domestically as well, but when it did happen internationally, and it did often, these girls would be put in terrible situations. A lot of these women and young girls would be required to attend events and parties to entertain the friends and associates of their bosses. Due to the nature of some of the accusations that have been levied against all of these men's modeling agencies, it's very safe to say that we all know what kind of operation this was. And right now, it's really starting to look like there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes to ensure that any victim is completely silenced, even if it means them being deported when they hold the title of United Nations diplomat. I'm telling you guys, something is not right about this situation. Right now, the concern being raised is that if any of these claims are true, there may be efforts happening behind the scenes to keep people quiet, even if it involves deportation or legal pressure. At the same time, public figures continue to deny connections. For example, Trump has said he was never friends with Epstein, though photos and past reports have proven otherwise. In a 2017 email to former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, Epstein writing, "I have met some very bad people, none as bad as Trump. Not one decent cell in his body, so yes, dangerous." In a 2018 text to an unidentified person, Epstein writes, "I am the one who can take him down." Trump and Epstein were friends for more than a decade. Have you socialized with him? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Have you ever socialized with Donald Trump in the presence of females under the age of 18? Though I'd like to answer that question at least today. I'm going to have to assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights. Sir, after Trump launched his presidential campaign in 2015, Epstein told at least one reporter he had dirt to share, suggesting, quote, "Ask my houseman about Donald walking through the door, leaving his noseprint on the glass as young women were swimming in the pool, and he was so focused, he walked straight into the door." Epstein then asking, "Would you like photos of Donald and girls in bikinis in my kitchen?" Trump, who has denied any wrongdoing, says he broke off the friendship when he learned Epstein and his accomplice, Glenn Maxwell, were luring away women and teenage girls who worked at Mar-a-Lago. "He stole people that work for me. I said, don't ever do that again. He did it again, and I threw him out of the place. Persona. There's another piece of the puzzle that turns this picture into a damning indictment of Melania Trump and her early years in the United States. Reports from the Associated Press looked into her immigration history and found documents about how she first entered the country in 1996. According to that reporting, she came to the U.S. on a B1, B2 tourist visa. That type of visa allows someone to stay for a limited time, usually up to 6 months, but it does not allow them to work. The issue raised in the report is what happened next. Photos fanned across the covers of the New York Post a 25-year-old Melania Trump, then known as Melania K, posing provocatively for a French magazine. But the photos that raised a few eyebrows are now raising questions about Melania's immigration history. And I came to United States to New York in 1996. 1996 is the year she stands by telling CNN's Anderson Cooper and numerous other publications that's when she came to the U.S. But these photos were snapped in New York City in 1995, according to the author of her recent biography. So what difference does a year make? Possibly the difference between Mrs. Trump breaking immigration law or not. To understand why, listen to Melania Trump's own words. I came here on visa. I flew to Slovenia every few months to stamp it and came back. I apply for green card, and then after a few years for citizenship. I obeyed the law. I did it the right way. I didn't just sneak in and stay here. So I think that's what people should do. Trump insists she got her visa stamped every few months. If that's accurate, it would mean she had a type of visa, possibly a tourist visa, that needs to be updated periodically. But that type of visa does not allow working in the United States. The type of visa that does allow work is called H-1B. And the man who discovered Melania tells CNN he didn't sponsor her for an H-1B until 1996, a year after this racy photo shoot. But there's a caveat. The photographer behind the camera at the shoot, Yar Aldabazville, says Melania was a young model waiting for a big break, so she didn't get paid, which would mean she didn't violate any immigration laws. You were making this kind of magazine to have exposure, and this exposure was bringing you to the next level, to have catalog campaign and everything. So Melania was not paid for this photo shoot, you say? No. Nobody's paying. Nobody is paid. If that non-paid photo shoot was the only work she did before getting an H-1B visa, she wouldn't have broken any laws. Melania Trump isn't directly answering whether she was first in New York in 1995 instead of 1996, like she's previously stated. But could it simply be an honest error? She wrote this on Twitter. Let me set the record straight. I have at all times been in full compliance with the immigration laws of this country. Period. Any allegation to the contrary is simply untrue. The other possibility is that she didn't fully understand the rules at the time. It was common in the 1990s, especially in New York's modeling industry, for agencies to bring in foreign models on short-term visas and have them work anyway. Some reports say many young models were told it was normal, even if it wasn't technically legal. So it's possible she was misled by agencies or employers. Either way, under immigration law, working while on a tourist visa is considered a violation. This becomes important because later on, Melania received a green card in 2001 and eventually became a U.S. citizen. During that process, applicants are usually required to confirm that they have followed immigration laws. If the earlier work did violate those rules, then that part of her history could raise questions. In theory, the U.S. government should on paper review that, even investigate whether there was any misrepresentation during her application process. Because during a House hearing, Jasmine Crockett raised concerns about how Melania received her EB-1 visa back in 2001. That visa is often called the Einstein visa because it's meant for people with extraordinary ability. Crockett's point was simple. She argued that the program is usually for people with major achievements. We're eating up all the time on the other point. Let's jump to Melania. It's a Friday, folks, so we're going to jump around. All right, so back to Melania. Look, I think there's what she's pointing out. One, this is not a new story. This is not a new story. People have been bringing this up about Melania for a long time. Yeah, Washington Post has reported on this back several years ago, I believe it was. I think what she's trying to point out here, as the immigration policies right now are under fire and under scrutiny, is the inequity that someone who was, I think, dating Trump at that time, Melania Trump, or they were in a serious relationship. Some of that nature gets this seemingly pass. She was one of 5 people at that time from Slovenia who actually were granted the EB-1 visa. And she does not have, I would agree with Jasmine Great, she does not have any Einstein nature qualities or talents that would put her underneath that program. So the EB-1 visa does have the Einstein statute in it, but it also has other statutes as well. So you can get the EB-1 visa either through a one-time major international achievement, like a Nobel Prize, for example, but you can also get it by meeting 3 out of 10 specific criteria, including nationally, internationally recognized awards, high salary relative to others in the field, membership in distinguished associations, leading roles in distinguished organizations, or published material about their work. And there's an arts category that explicitly includes modeling. And extraordinary ability means being one of the small percentage whoever is into the very top of their field. She was a supermodel who had worked with very well-known photographers who had graced the covers of numerous fashion magazines, was demanding a very high rate to her work. So I think it's inarguable that she qualified for that arts category in the model. Yeah, I would disagree on that. And we could probably go back and forth on what we consider extraordinary. And I'm aware of all of that list. But I think, was she extraordinary? A supermodel who was extraordinary? I don't know about that one. Just saying, she was making a lot of money. I don't know. I'm just saying, well, really, we don't know how much she was making because, that's her private business. We don't know how much. We just know that her profile got significantly higher when she started dating Trump, who was extremely popular across the spectrum back then, and wasn't involved in politics yet. But you're talking about a very wealthy man who had a great amount of influence, and you happen to be dating him. I mean, we just look at the math ain't math. You just happen to be dating him and you get this EB-1. I don't know. So the doubt remains. Was it purely based on merit, or were there darker forces at play? It seems the latter may genuinely be true, especially if the allegations about Melania herself being an Epstein girl are true. There have always been rumors that she isn't happy about being married to Donald Trump, and she has shown that on multiple occasions. You're not the first lady to have to deal with her husband's alleged infidelities. Has this put a strain on your marriage? It is not concern and focus of mine. I'm a mother and a first lady, and I have much more important things to think about and to do. I know people like to speculate, and media like to speculate about our marriage. You mentioned you still have a good marriage. Do you love your husband? Yes, we are fine. Yes, it's what media speculate, and it's gossip. It's not always correct stuff. A major example comes from Stephanie Winston Wayloff, who says she was close to Melania for about 15 years. Wayloff frames her story as a version of the American dream. She grew up in Slovenia and moved to the United States in her mid-20s to pursue modeling. Not long after arriving, she met Trump, and they married in 2005. Trump himself has described their first meeting in simple terms. He noticed her at an event, approached her, and there was immediate chemistry. We met in New York, 1996 in September. We met at the fashion party. It was a big fashion party that my friend organized Fashion Week, and he invited me. That's how we met with Donald. Did you like him immediately or not? I like him. He had a great charm, but he arrived with the date. Oh, so, and he was very charming and great mind and great energy. We had connection from the beginning. And when was the next time you saw him? We saw each other, I think, around a week because I had work obligations. I traveled to Caribbean for a photo shoot. So when I came back, I called him and we got together. So you called him? Yes. He didn't call you. Well, when we met, I didn't give him my number. He was with the date. So I told him, give me your number and I will call you. They were meant for each other. What woman, what normal woman could actually handle that? None. For her, it was just politics. It's just liberal media. It is what it is. I know who I'm married.